Thank you so much for the warm welcome and the opportunity to be here with you all today. Yeah, I've been with TNC for about a year and a half now, and we've gone through kind of a focused effort to define some strategic approaches, which I'll share with the group as part of the presentation today. But I get to work with great community-based organizations, academic partners such as ASU, and local governments really around supporting this effort of increasing tree canopy, primarily in frontline areas across the Phoenix metro area. So I think the story of the program will connect nicely with what the story map offers. Yeah, and before that, I worked in local government. So I worked in the budget office at the city of Mesa. I see Laura Heineman is on the call today, and before that, had the opportunity to intern at the cities of Scottsdale and Peoria. I think I also see representation here today. So always like the local government connection. So yeah, thank you again for having me. And I think I will go ahead and share my screen and get started. Does that sound good? To be here. Thanks again to Anne and Allison for creating this shared learning opportunity and the space for this conversation. As Anne mentioned, my name is Mikayla Cutlip Qian. I see some familiar faces in the group and some new names as well. So it's so nice to become acquainted. And I think, for the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to start with a few slides on TNC and the Healthy Cities program to provide some context. And then we'll jump into an overview of the story map, kind of do a walkthrough, and then work through a few scenarios that the story map can help support. So the Nature Conservancy, or TNC, is a global environmental nonprofit. We work in every state, and we have a presence in over 70 countries, and we work to really create a world where both people and nature can thrive. In Arizona, our 4 areas are represented on the screen. We work to lead forest restoration, preserve water, act on climate, and build healthy cities, the last of which is the program that I work in. And as part of the Healthy Cities program, we also participate in something called the North American Cities Network. So we're able to really share science information and best practices on equitable urban conservation with groups across the US. So recognizing that the world is increasingly urbanizing and that nature-based solutions can help address challenges in urban environments, TNC began working in cities in 2014, and Arizona was one of the first states to create a cities program. So over the past 10 years, we've worked with community, academic, and governmental organizations on heat planning, tree canopy policies, and programs to mitigate urban heat. Our program's goal is to increase tree canopy in frontline areas in the Phoenix metro area. And I alluded to this, but our strategic approaches are listed here. And I wanted to just call out a couple of highlights. Anne mentioned the Urban Heat Leadership Academy, which some folks on this call have been program partners on that. TNC offers this annually with the Phoenix Revitalization Corporation. It's a capacity building program offered in English and Spanish. And the development of this program was heavily informed by the Heat Action Planning Project for Greater Phoenix. This was a project it started in 2017, 2018 and ran for a few years. This was a project that TNC worked in close partnership with organizations including ASU, community-based organizations to develop that resource. We also advocate for investment in and policies for nature-based solutions. We work to mainstream green stormwater infrastructure and protect urban canopy. And transitioning more to the Story Map project, why we're all here today. So the goal of this Story Map project was really to create an engaging web tool to educate and empower people to build heat-ready communities. For folks who might not be familiar with the Story Map tool from ArcGIS, it's a user-friendly tool where you can showcase both data and other media sources to tell a compelling story. So we really wanted to use this tool to highlight stories of what it's like to experience extreme heat and compile resources for folks to learn more and to take action. And we did not do this alone. We worked with several partners, many of which are on the call today, and they were instrumental in ideating, sharing resources, providing feedback, and ultimately co-creating this tool. And this is an important way that we work at TNC. Since the beginning of the Healthy Cities program, we've worked in partnership with aligned organizations to maximize our collective impact. The organizations that were involved in this process all brought different perspectives and strengths to the table, and their logos are represented here. And a note on the process. So the idea of the story map first came about back in 2021. So the TNC team at that time pursued funding opportunities and engaged in an internal function that we have called the Agility Lab. And this group really helped to design and lead a sprint, design sprint, if you will, in 2021 to build out the first draft of this tool with partners. And then it took a pause. Our program didn't necessarily have the capacity at that time to really move forward. But in 2023, we were able to begin the build out. We did work with a few different contractors around video creation, graphics. We worked with a TNC spatial scientist, and of course with partners to develop the tool. And the story map launched during the heat season in 2023. It saw high engagement over social media feeds. So in just a moment, I will pop us over to the story map page itself. But before we do that, I did want to highlight the data utilized in the tool, in case this is of interest to anyone in the group. So moving from left to right here, for the land surface temperature, we utilized data from Landsat, the USGS, and we looked at this data averaged on a census block level for each individual year from 2010 to 2021. And the map represents the median value across years for each census block group. We wanted to include several years of data to kind of control for the natural variability that can happen with temperature. For tree canopy data, we actually utilized two sources and we kind of combined them. So we had some TNC data from a 2021 study that looked at a few different metro areas. And we chose that as a primary source because it was very specific and granular. However, it was not available in census block groups with lower populations, so more at the perimeter of the map that you're seeing there. So in the case where we sort of had to fill in the gaps, we utilized tree canopy data from the National Land Cover data set. And then also, we wanted to speak to the equity issue, which is kind of captured at the first statement on this slide. So understanding heat is important, understanding tree canopy is important, but also understanding the population that is living in all of our cities and towns is also important. So we chose to represent this through social vulnerability. The CDC offers an index that we utilized, and the data for Arizona is developed again at the census tract level and ranked against the other tracts in the state. We had to do a little bit of data transformation here because it was available at the tract, but we did split it into the census block group just so that we could compare apples to apples across these three maps. Okay, so if I can do this effectively, I'm going to take us over to the story map. I should have had like a drum roll sound effect or something. Okay, so if that worked, I think we're all seeing the story map. If we're not, somebody please let me know. But we'll go ahead and walk through it, and I'll of course provide the link so that everyone can access this, if you wanted to do a deeper dive on your own. But the first introduction really introduces the topic of extreme heat and introduces the idea that not all areas are equal in the experience of heat and cooling resources. I do want to call out that the full page is available in Spanish. So that link will load there, but that's an important part of the work that we do. The Urban Heat Leadership Academy is available in Spanish. We try to make our resources and documents multilingual. So if this is something that you're interested in sharing out, and we encourage you to do so, just know that it is available in 2 languages. And there is a video here. If we have some time, we'll come back to watch the full video, but with introducing the topic of extreme heat, on the left-hand side, we have text, and we have some statistics there. But we also wanted to share stories. That's one of the benefits of the story map tool, right, is you can kind of combine all of these assets. And we had some graduates from the Urban Heat Leadership Academy that were interested in sharing their stories and really speaking to what does it feel like to live and work in some of these hot neighborhoods. So we have a few, firsthand accounts here. We have Minerva who's speaking here. And we hear from Juana as well. And you'll start to notice, there are different links spread throughout the story map. This was really where the power of partnership came into play, because we're able to sort of compile resources so that if somebody is interested in the topic of heat, they can come to this source and learn about it and connect with, data from Maricopa County. Here we have a link to a public-facing Urban Heat Leadership Academy video. So you can kind of, explore this on your own time, but this is a topic on heat impacts, and actually the full playlist is available on the right-hand side here. But a bit of an education if people are curious. And then there's a link to additional heat stories captured during the heat action planning process. So I mentioned, linking out to partner resources around data, about heat safety. We also link to the economic assessment that TNC completed a couple of years ago that quantifies the cost of inaction. And that's a really great resource if you're looking to try to make the case for heat mitigation. That's available through the link. And then this sort of sets the expectations for folks about what they can expect to see with the remainder of the story map. We'll have the opportunity to explore data, learn about solutions, and then access resources. So moving into the interactive data component. We kind of define, the idea of heat vulnerability and how these 3 layers of data help inform us around that topic. We introduce land surface temperature as a concept and tried to introduce, not just text, but visual resources as well. Things that would engage a variety of learning types. And the first 3 maps that you'll see, you can engage with them. You can zoom in, you can select a census tract, and it will give you the data on that location. But the most interactive feature will actually compile all 3 layers, and that'll be the 4th map that we look at. And then a link to the data source as well that is available for each map. So we see our tree canopy data loading. And I should also mention sort of a note on how we defined, the Phoenix metro area, because that can be a bit subjective. If you'll zoom out here, you can kind of see we took the boundaries of, I think it was the 10 largest cities in Maricopa County. And the reason for that was a big focus of the messaging in this story map is the idea of the urban heat island effect. And I think that was defined in the map above. So we did want to look for areas that were, had higher populations, larger swaths of land that have been developed, maybe have higher impervious surface. And so that's kind of how we defined it, just for some background. But certainly, this kind of data analysis could certainly be done on a larger or smaller scale. So yeah, a little bit of discussion around how tree canopy relates to heat, and offering a thermal photograph, so different ways to understand the background, and prompting a little bit, how do these things relate? The darker areas have more tree canopy while the lighter areas have less. How does that compare to the land surface temperature data that we just looked at? And then entering the social vulnerability data layer. So this is defined here. And it calls out that this map displays socioeconomic data, including poverty levels, homes without access to vehicles, educational attainment. It also includes different layers related to individuals who are elderly and those who are young. We know that those are populations more vulnerable to extreme heat. So I know that there's the CGIS tool out there. I'm sure a lot of folks have used that as well. But we chose this because we felt that it represented how resilient communities might be in some sort of extreme event, such as extreme heat. But the CDC also uses this for, modeling the effects of hurricanes, a pandemic. So that's just a bit of additional information on the social vulnerability index. And then we get to the most interactive component here, which is how does your neighborhood fare? So we just learned a little bit about each of the 3 data layers. And I'm actually going to, I think this will help us a bit. I'm going to click on this icon in the right hand, which will bring it into a full screen. And I thought we could look at this from a few different perspectives to think about, how can folks engage with this data? How might this tool be useful to different audiences? So usually what I do is I zoom in and I open this layer box here. So I have the ability then to turn on and off the different data layers. And we can actually turn off all layers if we wanted to. So, if I'm a community resident and maybe I am learning for the first time about the topic of extreme heat and how it relates to equity issues, how it might relate to tree canopy cover and the health of my community, maybe I just want to explore some trends on the city level. So maybe I live in the Phoenix area, and I wanted to do some exploration. I could turn on these different layers and really examine, what is happening on the census block level. I can look at the base map below and kind of get an idea for where I am. And maybe that prompts some questions for me. Maybe I'm priming myself to take action, which is the 3rd and final section in the story map, which we'll conclude with. Maybe it's just a learning opportunity. Maybe I'm also a graduate of the Urban Heat Leadership Academy. I'll turn these back on. And I have decided to apply for a small grant to fund a project in my neighborhood. Well, I happen to live in Chandler. So let's see, let's go to Chandler City Hall. You can input an address in this field here, and it'll take you to the census block. And it'll pull up data that we can explore a little bit. I wonder if that's easy to read and see from your vantage point, but it basically calls out the trends. So this is saying that the summer land surface temperature in the block that I have selected is higher than the regional average. The tree canopy is lower and the social vulnerability is higher. And then we can look at the data here. Oh, that's interesting. It looks like my summer land surface temperature has an average of 127.6, compared to the average for the region, 127.4. So pretty close on that one. I can also explore, we have a greater discrepancy with the tree canopy percent. The average for this block is 5.1%. The average for the Phoenix metro area is 8.6. And our social vulnerability is 78.9, compared to the average of 47.1. So there's greater social need in this particular area. So maybe I want to organize my community and try to work to address some of the disparities in this area. I could apply for a small grant with TNC, work with some mentor organizations, and plan a project to try to shift some of those data points here. And lastly, I know we have a lot of local government folks on the call. So from a local government perspective, maybe somewhere in the West Valley is thinking about updating a tree and shade master plan, or they're developing some updates to a sustainability plan. You can zoom out, find your city and town. Maybe you're thinking about where to locate a resiliency hub. We can zoom in different areas, or if you had a location and you knew the address of, you could certainly enter it up here in this box. And then you could explore those different data layers. So in the downtown near Peoria City Hall, we've got some higher than average land surface temperatures. We can look at tree canopy trends. We can look at social vulnerability. So the story map, offers a lot of education and advocacy, which is maybe geared toward, the resident level. But I think the data here can be used by many different audiences. And for folks who are savvy with GIS, I think you can export the different layers here or the data sets. Otherwise, we're certainly happy to share for anyone who's interested in that. So once folks have the chance to engage in the data, we wanted to circle back with Juana and Minerva, who kind of set the stage with their stories in the beginning. So we have the section around hope for the future. Both of them offered perspectives on, yes, extreme heat is a reality. And they both felt like there were ways to connect with opportunities to make change. Maybe if we have time, we can come back to these videos for a longer look. We offer some solution examples. So this side-by-side streetscape, can use the slider here to see, this is a street in Phoenix, and these graphics were created around the heat action planning guide process. But, if there were interventions that increased tree canopy and GSI features, what might that street look like? How might that experience for pedestrians, for bicyclists, change? And there's some links to the Green Infrastructure Handbook, a shout out to SCN and the City of Scottsdale, and a video to learn more about GSI as well. We highlighted the City of Phoenix, their pilot program for cool pavement opportunities, and how not just nature-based, but built environment solutions can really play a part in addressing urban heat. Street trees, kind of the visual impact of what is possible here. And a connection to, this is the iTree resource where you can do some modeling around the effects and benefits of trees. Cool roofs, structured shade, and of course we receive the maximum benefit by combining these solutions. And the story map concludes by taking action. So hopefully folks are feeling excited and inspired by opportunities at this point. So we've connected some resources here. The idea is it's built on, what can you do as an individual? And then if you wanted to scale up, what sort of resources might be useful to you? So taking action by, if you are a utility customer of SRP and APS, linking to community tree programs, offering some resources on tree selection and care, capturing rainwater in your yard to support trees and plants. I think I saw Charlie from WMG on the call. So those are some watershed management group videos and resources there. And then if you wanted to work more collectively, how can you change your neighborhood's heat story? We have the City of Phoenix, their community tree shade blueprint, opportunities to volunteer with tree plantings with Arizona Sustainability Alliance and Trees Matter, and the heat action planning guide that I've referenced a few times throughout this presentation. That is linked here. And maybe you want to change your city's heat story. There's some advocacy resources from Trees Matter, a storytelling brief from Vitalist Health Foundation that can help individuals craft a message that's rooted in their own story and their own experience. And finally, a link to the Urban Heat Leadership Academy. That is a program where the application launches in April or May every year, and that's a program that runs from May to October. So when that launches, it's a way for folks to get involved. And yeah, we end with a thank you to all of the partners. So that's really a summary of the story map itself. I have one final slide, and then we can take questions, and if we have time, we can look at some of those videos. Let me make sure I can get back to it. Okay. So, reflections in closing. Of course, lessons were learned by going through the process here. This is one tool in a larger toolkit. Several of you and your organizations have developed your own tools to inform your own decisions around heat planning and tree canopy. There are some great other tools on the market. I know the Arizona State University Healthy Urban Environments tool is out there. Casca has a green print. Of course, American Forest has their tree equity score analyzer. So they all bring, different lenses to how to analyze similar data, but I think the niche of this story map is really an emphasis on storytelling, education, and engagement. And for those of you who maybe you don't have a data tool, maybe this can work for, building your case or aiding in decision making. And I think our real strength of this project was the partner engagement that I've mentioned throughout. TNC certainly focuses on nature-based solutions, but the resource and solution section did include built environment and combined solutions because we know that that's a very important part to communication. And tools like this ultimately help us focus our efforts on priority areas. How can we direct action and investment in these areas that stand to benefit the most from increasing tree canopy and other heat-reducing measures? And lastly, as we are all familiar with the record-breaking heat season of 2023, TNC, and I'm sure many of your organizations that received increased media outreach and attention during this time, the story map tool was really useful in helping to share out information on our region, but also making sure to convey some real, human experiences in that. And I think there was an example of an outlet actually being able to connect with Juana and Minerva for some greater interviews. I'm not sure if it actually was published or not, but it was an interesting way to sort of connect some of these leaders from hot communities with, some larger outlets so that their stories, when of course they're willing to be shared, can be shared. So, it was a lot of information. My contact information is here. I know we'll share um, the story map link. I can probably put that in the chat when I close my screen share. But maybe I should just do a quick check. Anne and Allison, do you think there's time for sharing one of those videos?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. I'm gonna see if I can do this screen wizardry again. Okay. Oh, and I wonder if I remember to share my audio. Let me try this one more time. Make sure I did that correct. Yes, I think so. Okay. Okay, I'm going to refresh the screen so we can start the videos from the beginning.
Mi nombre es Minerva Velarde. Tengo como 12 años viviendo en mi vecindario. Cuando era niña podía estar la mayor parte del tiempo afuera. Podíamos estar todo el tiempo afuera jugando y no nos afectaba el calor. Ahora ya no puedo hacer eso, ni siquiera puedo llevar a mis hijos a que hagan esto porque el calor es muy intenso. Entonces sí viene siendo como algo de nostalgia por lo que antes hacía que ahora ya no podemos salir a hacer. Porque ahorita que no está tan fuerte el calor, tú ves muchos niños corriendo por la calle en sus patines, en sus scooters, salen a caminar, a jugar. Cuando viene el tiempo de calor, no hay ni un niño, nadie sale, no hay adultos fuera de la calle. Estando trabajando aquí teníamos que ir a revisar una área de mesa. Entonces nos fuimos y nuestro carro no le servía el aire. Entonces en el trayecto eran como las 11 de la mañana, se sentía caliente. Aunque llevábamos los vidrios abajo, pues el aire se siente caliente. Al llegar ahí nos bajamos y no había ni un árbol, no había sombras, no había nada. Y yo sentía que me faltaba el aire, me sentía mareada, sentía ganas de vomitar, o sea, me sentía muy mal. Le dije a mi compañera, ¿sabes qué? Yo no creo aguantar mucho, mejor ya vámonos. Pero le digo a ella que mi visión era como de esas nieves que tienen muchas bolitas y que se va deshaciendo, deshaciendo. Así me sentía en ese momento. Llegamos a la oficina y aunque tomamos mucha agua, no sentía que me refrescaba, o sea, seguía sintiendo esa sed y ese calor por dentro muy feo.
I'll play Juana's as well.
Anteriormente vivía en Mesa por 2 años, pero en el 2002 me cambié a Phoenix, entonces tengo como 18 años ahí. Bueno, el calor me afecta, digo, cuando está a más de 120, 100, 120. Es porque ya no puedes hacer lo mismo que haces todos los días, ¿verdad? Yo día, por ejemplo, en el trabajo paramos de trabajar haciendo actividades al aire libre porque está muy caliente. Otra cosa que hacemos para prevenir el calor, pues no salir cuando es hora pico, cuando te dicen que de las 2 de la tarde a las 4 de la tarde no salir, solo si tienes necesidad de salir, como ir a recoger a mi hija. Especialmente mi compañera dijo que tenía un carro sin aire, entonces comprarme un carro que tenga aire acondicionado, no último modelo, pero pues que tenga aire y que funcione bien, porque mi hija y yo éramos las que siempre andábamos ahí sudando con el calor. Por ejemplo, en mi barrio el exceso de calor afecta porque son puras personas de la tercera edad. Casi ellos no salen, solo salen a comprar algo de mandado si es necesario. Y el señor me estaba diciendo, un vecino, que él solo cruzó la calle y no puede caminar, cruzar la calle, ¿verdad? Por el tráfico y la temperatura. Entonces se estaciona enfrente, hay una tienda que es... y cuando se quiso bajar, sus piernas se tambaleaban y dijo, solo fueron 5 minutos en el calor. Entonces, y yo le comento, ¿y por qué no hace sus mandados más tarde o muy temprano?
And our last video is the shortest of all, so I think it's just about a minute, but let's check in again with Minerva.
Tengamos muchos árboles plantados. que tengamos mucha recolección de agua de lluvias, para que con eso los árboles se vayan nutriendo y también que nosotros tengamos más agua. Deseo que todas nuestras calles, nosotros tenemos una calle que está aquí por la 24 Street, que tiene muchos árboles seguiditos y dan sombra para las casas y también dan sombra para la calle. Eso me gustaría ver, en fin, que se hiciera toda esta plantación de árboles aquí en nuestra ciudad. Y como dicen, los mismos árboles van a llamar más lluvia, los árboles van a limpiar el clima. Entonces sí me gustaría ver mucho más sombra de árboles en la ciudad. Me siento con esperanza en el futuro porque las personas del gobierno, los políticos y las organizaciones, junto con la comunidad, nos unimos, entonces vamos a poder llegar a una meta para poder ayudar a la tierra. Esto me da esperanza porque todos tenemos niños, entonces ¿qué es lo que les queremos dejar? Algo bonito, pero si todos nos unimos lo vamos a lograr.
So that is the story map. Oh, and I see some questions too. That's great. But
Yes.
yeah, I thank you for the opportunity. And as Anne and SCN were one of those project partners, so Anne, thank you for your feedback in the development of the story map. Definitely was made stronger with everyone's feedback. So thank you.